something your family always celebrated privately that other families do publicly? In my family, we did what we called Passing Day every year on June 11th. It wasn't like a normal celebration with cake and presents. We'd wake up at 3:11 a.m. exactly. My dad would play this really specific song from the 70s about surviving, and we'd all gather in the living room wearing white. Mom would lay out this old Polaroid of my Uncle Roland who died before I was born, and we'd all have to touch it. My dad would make us all drink this nasty smoothie thing that was like tomato juice and raw eggs and some other stuff I never knew. He said it was life force, but it made me gag every time. The rule was, you couldn't stop drinking until the song ended. The weirdest part was we couldn't talk about Passing Day to anyone outside our house. Not even my grandparents knew we did this. I found out in middle school that normal families just have like regular birthdays and anniversaries. I guess the worst part was the isolation room. After the smoothie thing, we'd each have to spend exactly 1 hour alone in a dark closet. Dad called it the void, and said it was to help us understand what Uncle Roland went through. As a kid, I was terrified of the dark and would sob the entire time. But Dad said that was part of it, that I needed to feel the fear to appreciate being alive. When I got older, I started asking questions. Like why we celebrated someone dying in such a weird way. Mom would get all quiet and Dad would get super intense saying I didn't understand what a gift it was to be here. I remember him grabbing my shoulders once when I was 15, and I was like crying because I wanted to sleep over at Miranda's house on Passing Day. He looked at me with these wild eyes and said, Passing Day was the only reason I existed. I think that was when I started to realize something was off. Miranda's family just had normal traditions like Christmas and Thanksgiving. They didn't make her drink disgusting smoothies or lock her in closets or wake up at weird times. They didn't have pictures of dead relatives they had to touch. I spent years being so confused about it all. Sometimes I'd try to ask about Uncle Roland, like how he died or why we did all this stuff. Mom would just say he passed over, which told me nothing. Dad would get this distant look and say Roland sacrificed everything for our family. It was all so dramatic and vague. When I turned 18, I refused to do Passing Day. Dad went ballistic, like full on screaming that I was ungrateful and didn't deserve what Roland had given us. Mom just cried in the corner, which made me feel like shit, but I couldn't do it anymore. I stood my ground and Dad actually locked me out of the house. I had to stay with Miranda that night. The next day, Mom called me crying, saying I needed to come home. When I got there, Dad was acting like nothing happened. It was so messed up. He just casually asked if I wanted breakfast, like he hadn't kicked me out the night before. After that, I moved out as fast as I could, got an apartment with Kayla, and tried to put some distance between me and my family's weirdness. I'd still visit sometimes, but I made sure it was never around June 11th. The thing is, I still couldn't stop thinking about Uncle Roland and what really happened. Why did we have this bizarre ritual around his death? Why was my dad so obsessed with it? Why couldn't we talk about it? Last year, I finally got the courage to ask my grandma about him. We were having coffee, and I just casually mentioned Roland's name. She got this confused look and was like, who? Which blew my mind because this was supposedly her son who died. I tried to explain about Dad's brother Roland who passed away before I was born. Grandma looked seriously concerned and told me my dad was an only child. She'd never heard of any Roland in the family. I felt like I was going crazy. I went home and dug through old family albums looking for that Polaroid we used during Passing Day. I couldn't find it anywhere. I was seriously starting to think I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe Passing Day was some elaborate game my dad made up. But why would he invent a fake dead brother? A few weeks later, I found this old box hidden behind some insulation. Inside was the Polaroid of Uncle Roland, but it wasn't a picture of a man. It was a picture of a little boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old. And written on the back was, Cody, age 8, summer camp 1985. Cody is my dad's name. There were other things in the box too. I didn't have time to read it all, but I took some pictures with my phone when my parents weren't looking. That night, I read through what I'd captured. The journal was my dad's from when he was a kid. Apparently, he had a near-drowning experience at camp when he was 8. He was underwater for over 4 minutes, and was technically dead before they resuscitated him. The time of the incident? 3:11 a.m. The date? June 11th. Everything started making sense in the most twisted way. There was no Uncle Roland. Roland was what my dad called the part of him that died that day. The Passing Day ritual was commemorating my dad's own near-death experience. The isolation in the dark closet was supposed to simulate drowning. But the most disturbing part came at the end of the journal entries. My dad wrote that when he was on the other side, he made a deal with something he called the void. He promised to honor it every year with a